I'm super excited. It was pretty full earlier yesterday, but now with all the teachers here, and I've already reacquainted myself with the teachers that I was working with and that I saw last summer. So Tammy and I and Janet and Suzanne are super pumped. And we're hoping that you are going to enjoy the day and get a lot of work done, and so we're going to get started. Take a moment to relax and get present. 1 minute. We're going to start out with some fun. So here's what I'd like you to do. Your school is going to create a handshake that represents your school. And then when I say go, you're going to teach that handshake to another school. But the handshake that you create for your school, I want you to know that you're going to be prepared to share your handshake with everyone. So, you know, Tammy and I would not be right if we didn't come up with and model our little handshake. We'll see how this goes.
Here's your example.
Are we all clear? Each school comes up with a handshake. You're going to demonstrate that handshake sometime between now and the end, but I'm going to ask you to share your handshake with another school. All right. You have 3 minutes to get together in your school group and come up with a handshake. Feel free to stand up. Feel free to stand up. Pause. All right. Every school team has their handshake, right? Okay, so now you need to find another school and share your handshake with each other. They need to be able to do your handshake. You need to be able to do their handshake. Go. Has everyone learned each other's handshakes? All right, so now what I'd like you to do is in your school team, I want you to form a circle around the room. Because all the groups, find a spot around this room because you're all going to demonstrate your school handshake. So find a spot around the room. Okay, here's how we're going to do this. I get to say what direction. And so I'm going to point in a direction, and the direction that I point in, that particular group is going to share their handshake, and then we're just going to go around.
But right before you do your handshake, have one member of your school team say your school name.
Are we good?
Valentine Faith College.
St. Paul Square Educational College.
Good morning, we are from St. Stephen's College Preparatory School.
Okay, Poichen Middle School.
YN College, Hong Kong, Kowloon.
We're from Poland Main College.
We're HKUJ College.
We're from Puerto Middle School, and our mission is encouraging growth for all.
The middle, the Vision Covenant Church Public College, Kim Mao Trung Học.
Fanning Hao-Yin College. Let's do it together.
ERCHK Dufferin Secondary School.
We are from Union Number 1 Secondary School.
We're from Chanchikoi Memorial School.
We are from England Church College now, Second Street, 2.
The Hong Kong College Association, Ching Chung Secondary School.
We are from Pentecostal School.
Our mascot is a dove, so see, you can find it in our handshake.
China Holiness College 中誠書院。
So I'd like you to give yourselves a round, and you can head back to your tables.
Okay, we have a very full day today and lots of time for you to work with your school teams. So we're in the welcome and opening right now, community opener, which we just experienced. And then we're going to spend some time this morning sharing our learning with each other. That means teachers sharing with the school leaders and school leaders sharing with the teachers, because teachers, we've caught up your school leaders over the last 2 days. We gave them an overview of what you learned at the I3 conference. So we wanted to give you a chance to some structured time, so I'll give you that assignment in just a minute. And then we're going to go through a session on pedagogical content knowledge that we were introduced to a little bit, but we're going into a deeper session today on that. Then we have lunch, and afterwards we're going to talk a little bit about developing site capacity and teacher leadership. And then we're going to give you some planning time with your school teams to think about how you may incorporate as a whole school system some of the things that you have learned throughout the I3 experience and from the Hong Kong Principals Institute experience over the last couple of days. And then we will have a final closing this afternoon. So very, very full schedule. As you know, the teachers, we usually go through the GOTS and needs, and so it's not as detailed of a summary, but yesterday's GOTS in general were appreciation of the entire cycle of learning, and for better understanding of core practices and rehearsal were particular areas from that people called out. And then the value of conceptual flow. Yes, teachers, we major school leaders give that a try. So that was yesterday's GOTS. And some needs are just more resources. There seemed to be a theme of just more resources and more examples. And with that, Principal Tam had asked, on the resource document, will all those links still be live when we leave here? And the answer was yes. And so we have all of your GOTS and needs from the last few days, and our team will be kind of sorting through and thinking about what kinds of additional readings or tools or articles that we can start linking on there for you. So we will continue to add to that even after our time here is over. And just more examples. I think I just wanted to add that this is a very short amount of time to be with you. So there is only so much we can show you. We kind of give you an abbreviated version of this. A lot of these things that we're showing you could be a whole week in itself. So we're doing the best that we can to give you as many concrete examples, but as we continue to work together, hopefully you'll be able to see some of these things in action, especially in the teachers' classrooms that you have that have been working with CSEC coaches this last year. Okay, this is just a review of the norms, and teachers, this may look familiar, but these are the norms that we've been using over the last few days. I'll just give you a minute to take a look at them, reflect how we've been doing on them. I noticed the last bullet that we added yesterday, be willing to take some more risks. I definitely saw that yesterday in terms of participation and being willing to share. teams today to talk about maybe problems of practice and issues they're having at the school site to keep a positive asset lens on that, especially when we talk about instruction and maybe possible needs for improvement. We want to think about the strengths that we can and how we're going to make things better. Okay, so you're ready to do some work together. So, we're actually going to type this out. This is actually structured sharing learning. You're sitting with your school teams right now. There are 4 steps we would like each school team to do. The first one is have the school leaders share what you've learned over the past 2 days here with your teachers. It should look familiar. You can use your resource document and just share what you've learned. Your teachers have been through and should recognize a lot of the learning. Then, the next 15 minutes, teachers respond and connect to what school leaders have shared, your own personal experiences around these things. After the end of those 2 sections, 30 minutes in, you're going to choose one idea that your team is really excited about, and write 1 sentence that summarizes your team thinking on one of the large sticky notes. You're going to post this idea on your school poster. So teachers, your school leaders have made posters of each one of the schools that are here today. So you're going to post that idea on the poster, and we will do a whole group share out of that 1 sentence. And just go all the way around at the end of that time. Okay? This slide will stay up. I will not switch this slide, but I will put a timer on for 15 minutes. So at 15 minutes, I'm going to ask you to switch. I do this explicitly and letting you know because I want to make sure that both groups have a chance to talk instead of just 30 minutes of talking about one thing. I want to make sure that all voices are heard. So 15 minutes and then 15 minutes. And then I'll ask you to find 1 sentence to summarize what you're excited about. Okay? All right, let's start. Put it on your posters. In just a minute, pick a spokesperson from your team to read that sentence and stand by your poster. You can have 1 spokesperson. Pick 1 person from your team to go stand by that poster after you have your sentence written in it. Step up there. We're going to do a quick share. 1 person to read your sentence. Okay, we're gonna do a quick share out. If you are your school team's representative, stand by your poster. If you are not, you can sit. And we're gonna stand, or I'm gonna start on this side. Stand by your poster if you are presenting for your school team. If you are the one person reading your sentence out loud, everybody else can stay seated. So there should be one person by every poster. Somebody here. Okay, those of you that are taking your team photo by your poster, that's good. You can stand by your poster. I'm good with that. There's lots of people doing it. Okay, let's get everyone's attention here. Remember, we're going to be respectful, listen to others. Okay. You are good students over here. That's why we're going to start here, over here. Okay, this is here are your directions. Ready? Hello. Using your teacher voice into the microphone. Okay, we're going to start here. We're just going to do a quick, we're going to go poster to poster for the school, say your school again, and then read your sentence. No need for explanation, just read your sentence. We're just going to pass it all the way through, okay?
YN College Hong Kong. Our statement is emphasis on conceptual framework through curriculum leadership will have lasting impact on student learning.
Puerto Middle School. So we are talking.
We learned there's important time for students to think about how and what they learned. And I think our school time Actually, it's 55 minutes, so therefore we think the teachers should leave at least 5 minutes for students to calm down and recollect and consolidate what they have learned, and no matter what they have owned their knowledge and anything they confused, and what further questions that they want to answer, and how to connect the previous knowledge to the new knowledge so that they can apply what they learned for the future.
Fanny College. Through our personal reflection on our education journey and powerful learning experience, we developed our common vision and mission for school development.
Preaching in the school, by applying conceptual flow, the content of our teaching can be more organized and logical.
HKUGA College, using conceptual flow to guide our PS curriculum enhancement.
St. Paul's Coeducational College, we aspire to enable teachers to elicit students' thinking by rehearsing during collaborative lesson planning.
Right, changing secondary school, we think that students can learn better if their responses to questions are not being evaluated, right?
The Union Institute of One Secondary School. The rehearsal of the lesson and feedback to it can significantly enhance the effectiveness of our teaching practice.
EI6K Lutheran Secondary School, we are excited about the preparing and rehearsing the practice, so we will integrate and optimize existing strengths with positive culture.
Lingnan Church and Child Secondary School, we are interested in a coaching cycle which can help us to focus on what we want to reflect in our classroom practice.
Lamtafa College, we are excited about empowering our teachers to be able to build conceptual framework in their teaching in order that our students can develop deep and lasting understanding.
Wine College Kowloon. The cycle of instruction improvement impressed us so much, and it provides us an opportunity for collaborating lesson planning, and the feedback can let our school shed the light on our blind spot. Okay, thank you.
The Mission Covenant Homeglad College, and we are impressed with core practice, so we would like to actualize core practice among teachers.
St. Stephen's College Preparatory School, developing the cycle of learning for instructional improvement to listening, citizen thinking.
At Pentecostal School, we are eager to learn the conceptual flow concept. It helps planning and organizing as teachers and school administrators.
We're from Poland Community College. We're determined to optimize the cycle of learning, of improvement at both school level and teachers level to facilitate students' learning. Thank you.
China Multinational College. We put this web fast with some related knowledge together and develop the conceptual framework.
This is Chanshiko Memorial School. Actually, we're very excited about collaboration with our colleagues. So we're thinking that each teacher could share a piece of student work, and with the subject level teachers, and then they will give structured feedback for each other, and then it will be 2 giant leaps towards teacher collaboration at our school.
Fabulous, thank you so much. Take one last photo by your pink poster. I love it. And then come, let's have one more thing. Before you have a break, stay where you are.
So everyone participated in the handshake except for our host. So Bin Sheng Tang, here, come on up. Thank you. You all have a 10-minute break.
For this particular trip, we have one of my favorite teams. I have lots of teams I like at CSEP, but this one is maybe my favorite team. Don't tell the June group that. Because Suzanne keeps our arc in place and keeps us organized. Tammy brings her leadership lens. Sharon is our consummate teacher. She always has the right move for what needs to happen for learning. I don't know if this complements or aggravates all those strengths, but what I bring is a lens on the work that we do from a research perspective. And that's the transition we're going to make now, is to talk some about pedagogical content knowledge, and in particular, the complexity of teaching. So, get your most academic brain going. Unfortunately, they got your kinetic energy going with your fancy handshakes and then moving around to the posters. So it buys me a little time to have you do some real intellectual work, which you've already foreshadowed in how you captured the thing that you want to focus on. So I'll leave some of what you said into what I'm doing. Let's see, for the teachers that were at the Institute in the summer, you saw a part of what we're going to do now, but it's somewhat expanded. So there's a piece of this that'll be new for everyone and some that'll be familiar for the teachers from the summer. And I used a few of these slides with some educators from China who were visiting CSET. This is Google Translate's version of Chinese. I know no Chinese, so I don't know how good or bad it is. I did find out that one of the translations for the word synthesis was particularly bad, so that's gone. But you can give me feedback afterwards and tell me how bad it is and whether we should just quit using Google Translate. As you know, through the last 2.5 days, for the principals and school leaders, we kept putting up this graphic image of knowledge bases for teaching and kept saying, teaching is complex, teaching is complex. And at the center of that graphic was this thing, PCK, pedagogical content knowledge. I am going to take you backwards in time about 30 years so we can look at where this idea came from. When did it emerge? And then how has it evolved over time? I've had the good fortune in my professional career for the last decade to work internationally with a group of researchers, including one at Hong Kong University, to explore this concept and really try to connect it from an abstract idea in the literature to something that matters when we're teaching and working with kids to improve learning. And so we're going to do this in 3 chapters: emergence of the idea, evolution of the model, and then trying to make sense of these ideas in the context of teaching. Early on in the work that became known as PCK, there was stuff written about these knowledge bases for teaching. And there's, depending which article you read, they vary, but these are a common set. There's a couple of tweaks in, like if you get into the math education literature, they use a particular phrasing that's not in this list, but basically these are the 6 areas that get covered. And what the literature says is in order to be an effective teacher, you actually need 6 deep knowledge bases. The first one is your subject matter knowledge. Whatever it is that you're teaching, you have to know that. I was a biology teacher when I was in the classroom. If I didn't know biology, it'd be pretty hard to be an effective biology teacher. You also need to have knowledge of students. Some of that is basic. It's some of the stuff we get in our teacher preparation program, like some fundamentals of developmental psychology. So that's a foundation. But then, like the work that you were doing with Sharon and Tammy, was it just yesterday? No, it was the first day, it was Tuesday. Where you dug into the knowledge of students and the rings of culture. That's a deeper way of knowing the particular students who are in your classroom. And so that is something we do every single year, and that builds on that foundation. Assessment. What are all the ways we can determine what a student knows and what's getting in the way of their knowing? Knowledge of curriculum. All those comments, and I think there were 4 or 5 at a minimum, of curricular coherence, looking at the arc of ideas over time, that's all building your knowledge of curriculum. Pedagogical knowledge is the general knowledge base you have for maintaining order in a classroom is one way to think about it. If you're if you're a beginning teacher, and I'm going to use examples from the U.S., which may not translate as well. But one of the things beginning teachers in the U.S. have trouble with is when the students enter the room and they try to get them settled and they try to take attendance. They can waste 10 minutes of instructional time with that routine. Well, developing that routine and being efficient, that's pedagogical knowledge. It does not matter if you're an English teacher, it does not matter if you're a first grade teacher, it does not matter if you're teaching 12th graders. That's a pedagogical routine that you develop over time. That differs from pedagogical content knowledge because pedagogical content knowledge is the very specialized knowledge that it takes to have your students understand the subject matter. And that's the piece we'll dig into even more as we go. Lee Schulman is the one who first put this phrase, PCK, pedagogical content knowledge, into the literature. It was part of a speech he gave when he became president of the large research association called AERA. And it was, he made this speech in 1985. His first article was 86. The 87 article is often the one that's quotes are pulled from. And what he says is PCK is that special amalgam of content and pedagogy that is uniquely the province of teachers. And it is their own special form of professional learning. One of the ways I think about this unique province of teachers, this middle part of the sentence, if you go to see a scientist working in a lab or out in the field gathering data, their content knowledge, their subject matter knowledge is deep and rich. Their ability to teach someone else may or may not exist. But if you go into the room of a high school biology teacher who's very good at helping their students understand biology, that teacher has PCK. So just knowing your subject matter is not enough. It is a requirement, it is a prerequisite, but it is not enough to ensure that students learn. So once Schulman said this stuff, it really began to change how people thought about teacher education for both pre-service and in-service. And they began to try to put these ideas into something that they could call a model, like a visualization of how the ideas connected. There are a number of models in the literature, and I'm just going to focus on one line of work. And this relates to a group of science educators. Back in 2012, a colleague and I hosted what we called a summit. It was a meeting designed to tackle hard ideas. At that time, I was working in Colorado Springs, and we invited 28 people from 7 different countries. And the idea was we wanted to find out what we were doing that was similar and what we were doing that was different, because we all claimed to work in this space called PCK. So you see our goal or purpose was to discuss our divergences and clarify distinctions. Our outcomes were to have a common definition, what we call a consensus model, and then an actual book that described the work of that summit. It was a 5-day summit. On day 2, we were ready to call it quits. By the time we had shared all the differences, we thought there was no way we could ever bring all the different ideas together. And one of the reasons for wanting to bring the different ideas together is you have 28 people doing research in this area, and you can't build on the results because their vision of what the thing is they're studying is different. And if you think about research in any other field, like how we make advances in medicine, part of how that happens is building on the prior work. And so we were not able to do that in this particular area of educational research. So like I said, on day 2, we were about ready to go, okay, this is not possible. The stuff is too different. We're just all going to have a vacation in Colorado Springs. And so the second night of the conference, the summit, we actually just sort of took a break, and we had already scheduled a field trip for the 3rd day. And that took us away from the formal structure. And we actually went to a zoo and fed giraffes and learned the background breeding habits of the endangered animals they had in the zoo and all that kind of stuff. When we got back together after the field trip, there was a breakthrough. And we were able to bring together the divergent ideas that I'll get to in a moment. I forgot I wanted to give you a little more background. This is Lee Schulman. He's the person that hatched this idea of PCK. He gave the keynote address. This was on the first day of the conference. And what he said is, I feel like the biological father of a baby that was raised in its infancy and then given away for foster care when he was about 5 years old. So in other words, the idea spread way beyond him, and that's where that divergence came from. So, like I was saying, we finally got a breakthrough, and we did come up with a common definition. It's a very detailed definition, representing a consensus of 28 people. PCK is the knowledge of, reasoning behind, and planning for teaching a particular topic in a particular way, for a particular purpose, to particular students, for enhanced student outcomes. So to take kind of the beginning and the end, I like this word reasoning, because that's a really rich word. It's thinking about the what and the why, so that we have enhanced student outcomes. In other words, better learning. But what the middle does is say, just because it worked last year doesn't mean it's going to work this year. I continually have to attend to who the students are in my classroom. I continually have to do formative assessment that gives me information about whether or not that enhanced learning is happening. I think this definition captures how complex teaching is in a way no other sentence does. And it speaks to the number of complex decisions a teacher makes every minute in the classroom. If you take this work seriously, you don't just walk in and deliver a lesson. You are thinking and processing and watching the faces and looking at the student work and wandering the room and seeing what's happening in the discussion. You're checking what gets put up on the poster, and you're watching to see, are we headed toward these enhanced student outcomes? This tells us how complicated teaching is. So then we try to put the thing together in a model, in a graphic. And you see up here, at the very top, here are the knowledge bases. And there's 5 of the 6, because this set of knowledge bases does not include PCK. The PCK piece, let's see, there it is, whoops, sorry, I'm too many clicks. There we go, is in the middle. What we said at this summit is PCK is what we see when we're in the classroom. It builds on all these knowledge bases. It attends to particular instructional strategies. It is amplified and filtered by the teacher. This is what happens in the classroom. That is amplified and filtered by what happens with the students. And finally, that leads us to our student outcomes. Those student outcomes inform what the teacher does next. And so you have a loop in here that sits on top of these, I say on top of these, no visually, it's underneath. And then you can see all the arrows are double headed, again pointing out the complexity. So that's where the thinking was at the end of the meeting in 2012, and the book took till 2015 to get published, which is why the date varies. Okay, so keep some of that in your mind, because remember we're talking about the evolution of the model. Well, what happened when the researchers tried to use this is we ran into some challenges. There were elements of that model that were unclear. The model was interpreted somewhat differently by different researchers. Actually turned out in that book that's cited on the previous slide, there are two different versions of the model. We didn't even get it consistent in the same book. And that particular model did not unpack the concept of PCK very much. And so that all got in the way of, again, working toward that goal of consistency and research we could build on. So, in 2016, we had a second summit, and this time we had 8 countries represented, and about the same number of participants, but a third were new to the process. Because the idea was not to be an exclusive group, but to reach as broadly as we could. And we started out with the goal of looking at the research tools we were using to measure PCK. And what happened is this emergent need. In studying our own tools and the data we were collecting, we realized that the consensus model was not sufficient. And so, as a result, we refined the model, or began the process of refining the model. So I want to show you what that looked like. I already said all this. So we started out discussing data, but we moved toward revisiting the model. And in doing it, the work we were doing, we had all these mixed groups, and we had different types of data we were looking at, and all the color coding tells you ways that people moved around. There's a lot of cross-pollination. And again, about halfway through that summit, we started going, something's not quite working. We're in a better place than we were at the first summit, but something's still not working. And so as we had this in-depth conversation about our instruments, we started to have greater clarification and new insights. We realized that we had a better understanding of purposes and approaches, but we needed to continue to revise the model. This is the first change that happened after discussion. It doesn't matter if you can't read it. Mostly what I want to show you is down here at the bottom are all the knowledge bases. So the thing that was at the top flipped to the bottom. And remember when I was explaining that model to you, I said these are the foundations? That's how everybody was talking at the second summit, and that's how we realized, we don't have this model quite right. The other thing we found is we didn't have students and classroom activities central enough in that model. And so we were working at the whiteboard, and what this diagram shows, right in the middle, is this instructional cycle of plan and act, reflect. And this is PCK in action. And then over here are student outcomes, and over here is the knowledge bases of teachers. So that's how it began to start changing. And this is actually how we left the summit. And another colleague and I were tasked with taking this whiteboard drawing and creating a model, working with the graphic artist to change this into something more formal that went out for review. So just keep in mind, you gotta, whoops, sorry about that. Now you know what's coming. Okay, now let's see if I can do this. There's a big rectangle here, there's big arrows, there's a circle going around, there's more arrows, and another rectangle. And it all goes kind of sideways. That's what people are thinking we're going to reproduce with a graphic artist. This is what we showed them when we met with them the next time. A few months later, we were at a conference with most of the same people. So what do you think people's initial reaction was? Do you think this is what they were expecting? Like, what happened to all the boxes and arrows, right? Doesn't look anything like it. What happened was, as we met with the graphic artist, we explained what was on that whiteboard, what was in that picture. She would question us and say, but these things sound nested, and this sounds like it's inside this other thing, and this sounds like it's interacting. And so what happened was, these little diamonds are all meant to represent all the interactions between things. These blue circles over on the left-hand side are knowledge bases, and on the right-hand side, where the orange half of the circle is, that was all the stuff about learning context, with teaching in the middle. And so it really did represent those two big rectangles with teaching in the middle, but it looked really different. And so this was what we discussed with participants. We had interactive conference sessions. We had it in a Google document that people around the world commented on. And the number one thing they said is, we don't like this division. It's too artificial to separate these things. Like, learning context is on one half, knowledge is on the other half. And that didn't make sense to people. So we went back to the graphic artist, and instead it became this set of nested circles. And I'm going to actually unpack this one a whole bunch. So that's the complete model. And I'll just show you a couple. Subject matter is on this side, and it's intentionally half of that circle. Because as I mentioned to you before, that's a prerequisite for having PCK. Without subject matter knowledge or content knowledge, you don't have any PCK. And then we took the other knowledge bases, pedagogical, knowledge of students, curriculum, and assessment, and they're equally divided. That is more artistic than it is representative of the research. The research does tell us that subject matter knowledge is a significant component. Everything inside are rings of pedagogical content knowledge plus a context circle. So now let me take that model apart for you. Let's start in the center. Yes? Partially. Yeah, it's a little bit in that it's very intentional, where's my pointer, that the subject matter knowledge or content knowledge is half of the circle. The rest are less specific than that. So it's a sort of weighted. Yeah. We just don't have the data to be able to put that specificity in there. So we go to the center of the circle. This is the action of teaching. This is what's happening in the classroom. And what we argued from a research perspective is, what you see in the classroom is the enactment of pedagogical content knowledge. Remember that big fancy definition where you're doing the particular topic for the particular students in a particular way for enhanced student outcomes? That's what's happening when you're teaching. And we know from studies of effective teaching that planning, actually teaching, and reflecting on that teaching, that cycle actually does add up to effective teaching. And inside the head of the teacher is what we're calling pedagogical reasoning. All those decisions that you're making, that's your pedagogical reasoning. So in this diagram, this is our teacher in the center, and these little orange figures, those are the students. And anytime it's solid, it represents present time. Those are the students you're working with right now. If we go out a level, we call this personal PCK. And this is meant to say, you are more than what we see when I walk into your classroom. You actually have a growing body of pedagogical content knowledge that is based on your experience with former colleagues or current colleagues and former students. And so the outline figures here are part of what inform what you do every day. And so the difference between personal and enacted is personal is everything you might know, enacted is what you're choosing to use in the moment. Now we have the ring for learning context. What you're doing takes place in a context. And we can't ever ignore that. How you're able to teach in one school with one set of students may not translate to a different school or a different age of students. And so this model is designed to reflect the importance of learning context. All of that sits inside what we name collective PCK. That's the knowledge base held by the field. This might be published papers, this must be things other colleagues know. It's a collective, it's bigger than the individual. And so you also see these outlines of figures to represent, it's a collective body of people. Those layers of PCK sit on those foundational knowledge bases. So I like to think of these gray circles, or gray part of the circle, the subject matter, pedagogical, students, curriculum, and assessment, as being underneath. I think of that, those gray parts as going all the way underneath, and that's what the PCK sits on top of. Are you convinced that teaching is complex? Did you realize how many kinds of knowledge you were pulling from when you are in there with the students? I mean, I get tired explaining the model. So think about that action of being a teacher, and particularly being an effective teacher. If you want to be an ineffective teacher, it's nowhere near this complex. But if you want to be effective, it is this complex. So now we're at the kitten, stretching. I want to let that just kind of sit in your brain, give you a chance to get up, stretch, and then I'm going to give you a task to apply. So during the break, I'm actually going to leave the model up there, and just let it percolate. I'll put 10 minutes on the timer, and then we'll do a task where you get to apply it and figure out, well, what do I really get out of what she just talked about, and what do I still not know? All right, take a break. You were working. I'm going to have you do a task now to make sense of teaching by connecting your common experience to those knowledge bases. So, let's see. Let me talk through the whole process, so don't do any moving or gathering of materials. I want you to work in a school group for this. If your school group is more than 4 people, divide into 2 groups. It just gets cumbersome to have more than 4 people for the conversation. And you're going to take 6 sticky notes. All right, this is the part I need you to listen on, because I know from teaching it before, people get confused. So I'm using my PCK to try to make it less confusing. On those notes, those little pieces of paper, you're going to write a statement of importance. Let's use, for example, the first one. Subject matter knowledge. Why is it important? Whatever your team decides is why it's important, that's what you're going to write on that sticky note. And you have 6 of them because you're going to write a statement of importance for subject matter knowledge, students, assessment, curriculum, pedagogical knowledge, and PCK. 6 sticky notes. School team, if you're more than 4, divide in half. Questions? So what you're doing is having a team conversation about why you think each of these is important. And you're going to write 1 sentence on each sticky note. Raise your hand if it makes sense. There's about 1 person at each table that it makes sense for. I'll let you work at the table level, and I'll wander and answer questions.
And
on formative assessment.
Yep. I'm going to hand the mic to 13, and they're going to share a similarity. They'll hand it to 12, who will share a difference. They'll hand it to 11. So you all are going to be in charge, and we're going to alternate hearing similarities and differences.
Since we have a lot of brains and we have a lot of knowledge going around here, we already managed to evaluate knowledge of students, because that's the one that we're most interested in. So we found that many of the statements we wrote down prior knowledge, and I think that's fundamental. And that leads to many of the things that we wrote as well, which is the style and the background of the students. And then that would lead to setting goals, appropriate goals for the teaching and students' learning. And from the goals, we'll then design different materials, learning materials, and different instructional strategies, and from there we can then help students evaluate the learning. So these are the common themes, and I think there is a coherent, logical flow to all those ideas.
And you got all that from the student poster?
Yeah, from the student poster.
And so I noticed that too on the student poster. The student poster starts with students, and many of you know, you actually embedded other knowledge bases in there, and I could hear it in the story that you just shared, right? There's assessment and curriculum and pedagogy in what you just shared. So I thought that was an interesting pattern in that poster. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, Jim 12.
Maybe I'll talk about PCK. Well, we mentioned that PCK enables teachers to make sense, to make use of the first 5 areas of the knowledge to achieve effective learning of students. And we noticed that for other groups, maybe just pick one, they mentioned about individual, how PCK can enable an individual to learn in his or her way. Yeah.
So it's there's two ways to think about it, right? This sort of collective way or this individual way. And neither one is right or wrong, but thank you. That's a nice difference to point out. All right, table up.
Okay, so we look at the similarity for the subject matter, and I think most of us agree that the subject matter actually is the basic and also the foundation of teaching. And we also think that the subject matter knowledge actually helps lowering the structure and sequencing of concepts.
So it has a link to curriculum.
Yes.
Yeah, very nice. And if you think about how people learn finding two, where we talked about having a conceptual framework and knowing how that fits together, that ties directly to what you all are saying.
So we focus on the poster about students, and our difference with the other groups is the other groups, they mainly focus on prior knowledge, whereas we emphasize more on students' different learning styles. Instead of just understanding students' prior knowledge, we emphasize more on how we can make good use of students' existing learning styles to help them to learn better.
Very nice. That's a nice difference that's on that poster, is both prior knowledge and kind of who they are right now and how you work with that together. All right, table 9, let's hear your similarity.
So we would like to discuss about the subject comparison, to compare the subject matter knowledge. Actually, the subject matter builds up the fundamental knowledge of the student to resolve and encounter the problem in the future. But actually, after going through the different idea, different colleagues' ideas, we figured out that actually the knowledge is a kind of soul within the classroom. And actually, the knowledge should be built in a way that's the student as a center within the classroom. Okay, so it means that the knowledge should be well planned or maybe delivered in a systematic way.
Okay, all right, very 8.
A group focus on the pedagogical knowledge. For a group, we think that pedagogical knowledge means the varied teaching styles and choices to deliver knowledge. But in other groups, they focus on the effectiveness of the pedagogy. We think that pedagogical knowledge does not include the meanings of effectiveness there. Instead, it is pedagogical content knowledge that helps teachers to effectively choose the correct pedagogy in their own subject.
Yeah, I noticed that the pedagogical knowledge poster was probably the one that had the most confusion. It's a very difficult one to differentiate from PCK, especially because the work we've been doing with you, we actually haven't focused much on pedagogical knowledge. We focused more on the other knowledge bases. So that's your observation of what was on that poster maps to some of what I saw in there as well. 7.
Okay, a group focus on the similarities of curriculums. The similarities it gives us a general understanding of teaching and learning, and it gives us a scope of depth of the subject matters that you're going to teach, and also give you objective and concepts that you're going to teach within the syllabus. These are the similarities of the curriculums.
Yeah, I agree. I saw a lot of that on that poster. All right, table 6, tell us about a difference you saw.
We focus on the poster on subject matter. We think that it's like a scientist, they have a lot of knowledge about science, something like that. But after reading other posters, we also add something like more on the coherence or how students learn can also refer to the things like on subject matter.
5, give us another, similarity.
We focus on the curriculum part, and our message was like, with the curriculum, we try to build a whole picture for our students to see, and there are some very similar, but even written in a much stylish way. Like, curriculum knowledge is like a spine. It structures teaching and learning. And another group wrote like this: it is to build a systematic knowledge in a spiral way according to students' mentality and prior knowledge. Yeah, that's what we see.
Yeah, if we didn't have curriculum, why would we be in school, right? There's no what if there's no curriculum. And you picked out 2 nice sticky notes that really bring that to the foreground. All right, table 4, give us a...
We mainly focus on the knowledge of students, as was most of the other groups just talked about. It can be the prior knowledge that students have, but some other groups actually said that this is also related to the students as a person. So the better knowledge they have, that you have of the students, the more, the better you can know about them. And I was very impressed with one of the notes which said that the knowledge of students is like WD-40. So you can actually spot plagiarism in your students' work, and you know how to deal with it and help them learn better. So it was quite impressive to us.
That was a fun metaphor. And the student knowledge poster does point out the knowing what students know as well as knowing about the students. And there's if you read all the sticky notes as though it's one chapter in a book, it kind of tells you how much we want to understand about our students. Table 3.
So we would like to talk about the similarity regarding the knowledge of student. Our group really think that there are 2 ways to interpret this, because it's like the teacher's understanding to the student, and at the same time the knowledge that the student have. And I think the colleagues here, they share something similar than what we come up with. And actually, many of them, they will just find out that the final outcome is that we need to find out some strategy that can suit students' need, and then that can cater for their learning diversity.
So the group focus on assessment, and we find that all the groups are focused on the assessment for learning, but our group, the difference is we also focus on teaching.
Thank you. I don't think we had many comments on the assessment poster, so I'm glad you picked that one. All right, table one.
Something that we found consistent in all 6 knowledge-based posters was the wide range of reasoning in the statements. So in each poster, we would find statements that demonstrate perhaps analogical thinking, or statements that demonstrate synthesis. At the same time, we also found statements that were maybe generic knowledge level statements in these posters. So all of this suggests that we have a wide or diverse body of teacher learners here.
Very nice. That's a wonderful note to end on. I do have one more task for you to do, but before we do that, I'm going to do something that in some of the work we do, with the local school district, I'm going to pull back the curtain. We're going to look behind the teaching. And I'm going to do this in part to illustrate some of the knowledge bases. This is the one that I think people struggle with the most today. So let me give you some examples from what I've been doing that illustrate pedagogical knowledge, and I'll contrast it with PCK. My decision to use posters with the word on them and have you write on Post-its, that was based on my pedagogical knowledge. I knew that we were going to have a room of 80 or 90 people, and I had to think of what is a strategy I can use that makes your learning public so you can learn from each other, but is also a reasonable use of time and space. That's an independent decision of the content we were teaching. How I worded the questions and what I did before we got to the questions, that drew from my subject matter knowledge of PCK and what I know so far about how adults come to understand the knowledge bases. So that determined what the order of my slides was, as well as how I worded my questions for you. But the strategy I used didn't matter that it was PCK. That was I want the thinking public, and I want to work in a large space with a large number of people. So it helped to begin to differentiate, and I also purposely clustered these 3 ideas over here, because I have found when I teach about PCK and then other knowledge bases, these are the 3 that get the messiest. Those 3 seem to, practitioners know the differences between those 3 and how they work together. But there is a little bit of overlap here, so we purposely clustered them this way. So that's actually a mix. There's a little bit of pedagogy in that, just structurally, what do I do if I know that ideas are confusing? But because I knew certain ideas can be confusing, that's drawing on my PCK. Okay? So that's a pull back the curtain and help you see how I thought about it as a teacher. All right. Now this is our last task with PCK. This week, as well as the Summer Institute that the teachers were at, we did a variety of things that relate to each of these knowledge bases. There are some of the knowledge bases we did a lot more work in than others. And what I'd like you to do is discuss at your table 3 examples, a total of 3, that you think are examples of any of the knowledge bases. What's an example of something that related to an assessment knowledge base? What's an example of something that related to curriculum? Write those examples down on a sticky note and then just post it. And let's see, let's try maybe posting them around the edges so they hang off so we can see the examples differently than the inner statements. So this is a way to apply what you've been doing to these knowledge bases. Questions? Tammy?
Is it 3 examples for each person or 3 examples for the whole table?
3 examples for the whole table, and they can relate to any knowledge base. So just a total of 3 coming out of your table. Let's do a practice one. And I'm going to base this on some things you said when you were talking about the sentences you put on your posters. Many of you named the work with conceptual flow graphics as something that was meaningful. That's an example of work we did both in the Summer Institute and yesterday with the principals or the school leaders. Where would you put that example? Which poster would that go on? So you'd put it on pedagogy, okay? Where would you put it? You'd put it on curriculum. It turns out there can be multiple right answers. What I want you to do is make sense of it for you. All right, so if conceptual flow graphic to you is about learning curriculum, put it there. If for you it's a pedagogical strategy, put it on pedagogy. Okay? Go ahead, come up with your 3 examples and then post them on the posters. Around subject matter knowledge. And that's a good thing because we did nothing in this area. So, yay! Would have really been scary if something had shown up there. The PCK piece, I'm also super excited because during one of the times when you were working at your tables, I was talking to the team and I said, I don't think I've yet develop this lesson to make the link between core practice and PCK explicit enough. And yet, I walk over here, I see coaching, I see rehearsing, I see core practice, I see instructional improvement, I see talk move, I see a whole bunch of stuff that's core practices, and you're relating it to PCK. So even though I didn't think I had made it explicit in the lesson, you made the connection. So that's actually really exciting. In addition to things related to core practice, you pulled out elicit student thinking, which is a core practice, and the conceptual flow graphic, and in particular, clarifying the relationships between different ideas, which really is a great example of PCK, by the way. When you put that conceptual flow graphic together, you have to think about how you're teaching subject matter. So that's a really exciting set of sticky notes. We did pedagogical moves. We didn't do a lot of teaching of pedagogical moves. What you put up here, one is practice mindfulness, which Sharon launched us with a couple days ago, and she explicitly named that as a pedagogical practice. You also noticed the way we use facilitation moves and named that as a pedagogical move, and that's also a good example. So then if we come over to this wall, as we might expect, we've got a bunch of stickies on conceptual flow, which is really very related to curriculum, so that's reassuring to see that. For students, there's another wonderful collection. You saw Gods and Needs as a way of, I assume, how we got input from you as students. Rings of Culture, how people learn. Students' preconception knowledge, which is part of how people learn. You saw the whole session on knowledge of students being related to that. And then over here, one of my favorite parts, educational journey. You named that as a strategy that we used for knowledge of students. More on how people learn, and another one on how to have students participate in class. And then when we get to assessment, you named the idea tracker, which I thought is great because that was one of the strategies we used to help you, use some metacognitive skills and formulate your ideas as you go along. It also gives the instructor a chance to look at things in a formative way. And then traffic light. Was I out of the room when you did that? Did you do that yesterday afternoon?
We talked about some strategies to use for that.
Okay, good, thank you. So what's really nice is the workshop we designed appears to be the workshop you experienced. And so that's always great feedback for an instructor. Yes, applaud yourself. Thank you. All right, team, I'm checking in. Are there any announcements? Okay, it is 11:45. Can you be back and ready to work at 1 o'clock? All right, we'll see you at 1 o'clock.